Hey there, Cylinder Radio listeners. A few years ago, the documentary The Social Dilemma laid out how social media is very dangerous and bad for American society. But if you want to use social media to make yourself better, you can check out my free download, The Social Solution, on cylinderradio.com/social solution. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Cylinder Radio. I'm your host, Will Roosh, high school teacher in Los Angeles, trying to bring viewpoint diversity and telling different stories to try and bring nuance, but also shift mindsets so that we can approach the world in a way that really tries to pursue truth and for individuals to find their way to build a successful life based on their definition. And I think that's what a lot of being a classroom teacher is about, is helping young people to find their version of success. So my guest today is a friend of mine. It's always nice to have friends on the podcast, but he's a friend of mine. He is a high-level Jiu Jitsu athlete, Jiu Jitsu black belt, Rene Sousa. And the topic that we're going to talk about today is mindset, growth mindset. This book by Carol Dweck, specifically within athletics, because Rene is a professional athlete in the Jiu Jitsu world. And I think that his story and also the way that we can kind of break down how to approach athleticism and physicality and physical goals due to mindset. So Rene, it's great to see you, man. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and I'm excited to have a public conversation with you after we talk just about every day.
So, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to add to this, huge audience of viewpoint diversity that you have, just one little niche that maybe I'm not a specialist in, but maybe me sharing my data or my perspective or my life can make some people believe in themselves and kind of, go after their dreams in whatever little way it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I think when you and I first started talking, hanging out, and stuff like that, that resonated with me is I put a poll out on my Instagram, something along the lines of, maybe you remember it. It was something like negative things that people told you about yourself that you look back on. It was something along those lines.
Yeah.
Right? And you said that you were an unathletic kid. Now you make a living in athleticism. I mean, in a sport. So
yeah.
So that's something I resonated with. I do not make my living in a physical realm, but I was a very, very unathletic kid. And I'll talk about that a little bit, but it was something along those lines, right?
Yep. So I think it's just growing up in we kind of grew up both on the East Coast. So it's growing up on the East Coast, athleticism is you want to be the jock, you want to be the quarterback, Yeah, my dad both my parents immigrated here from Brazil. So athletics was huge to them, in whatever way we could get it. And I tried pretty much everything. And the only thing that kind of stuck after a while was soccer and jiu-jitsu, So I played soccer up until senior year in high school, and then started jiu-jitsu in sixth grade. And both of them for me were two things where I was all right, I'm just going to keep showing up. I'm just going to keep showing up. And soccer is pretty funny. My dad always said full Brazilian, both my parents. My dad was always you play soccer just like an American, So I was all right, that's a great compliment. Yeah, exactly. So I knew that wasn't my thing, but what was cool with jiu-jitsu was that I just kept learning stuff. And even I was the less athletic, weaker individual in my class, I kept hearing stories about Elio Gracie never being able to do a pull-up and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know, to me, it was just the more technique I learned, the more I'm going to be able to first just defend myself, and then second, in a tournament setting, be able to beat people. So I just kept learning and kept even though I might have been the more frail kind of individual, I just kept learning in jiu-jitsu and just kept sharpening that. And over time, it's changed my perspective. At first I was I can be unathletic and still be successful, but then recently, since I've focused on it full time, I've been able to shift into developing those levels of athleticism and then also applying the technique. So that's where I think I've left a lot of people that were sort of around my rank and just we were competing at the same time. That's where I surpassed them all, because I had been grinding on the technique for so long and I hadn't had the athleticism. And even still now, you look at me and some of my opponents, I'm not more athletic than them, but I'm just equal, if not a little bit less, So adding that with the 15 years of just sharpening technique, nowadays, I've definitely shifted that perspective from what you said, in terms of being unathletic, but definitely started that and developed kind of over time,
Yeah. And jiu-jitsu is an interesting one because people call it physical chess,
but it is an intellectual pursuit. I've had a bunch of high-level jiu-jitsu guys in the podcast, Kenny Florian, Matt Thornton, Thor Skanky. I had Zach Maslany on, who's a mutual friend of ours. I think that, I mean, I love jiu-jitsu, but I think that there is an element of it that you can kind of get away from your, explosive strength. That's kind of the point. Like you mentioned, he was the pioneer of the sport, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and he was like the weakest of his brothers. So he had to, streamline and everything like that. So there is that element, but when you get to the top, of course, it's fighting essentially.
Yeah.
Physicality matters. Being strong and explosive matters a lot. So when it comes to mindset, it's not that a big thing that Carol Dweck talks about, and this that I talk to my sons about and things is it's the way you kind of identify and the way you tell yourself the narrative. So instead of saying, I am unathletic, it is, I can become more athletic, something along those lines. So that's precisely what you're speaking of, like the ability that you have been able to become more athletic.
Yeah.
That is, as opposed to like, well, I'm just this way and that is the way. That's what we call fixed mindset compared to.
Yeah. And what I think for me was one thing that was a huge, just driving force for me was my dad. My dad was like always super motivational in terms of like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to show up every day. We're going to train, and I was like, all right, cool. Like, let's do it. So that was definitely a driving force that just kept me present and continuing to put in the work. But two key moments for me that like really like, if you like look at my journey, were like catalysts in terms of like me believing in that mindset. And then first of all, just learning the mindset. It was crazy to happen at the same time. Shout out to Mrs. Merrick, my AP physics teacher when I was a senior in high school. She made us read the book going into senior year. And I was just like I kind of already believed Carol Dweck's book. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
So she's amazing. And she's actually my strength coach's wife. So that's how I got introduced to my strength coach back in high school. And we've just stayed connected ever since. He's a big like mastermind behind me truly developing like my athleticism. But her planting that seed in my head of like, I can do anything I set my mind to. And then second of all, it was just before that time that I was working really hard and I was focused on jiu-jitsu, but I knew I couldn't I don't know, there wasn't this like route of being having a career in jiu-jitsu. Like, I mean, I'm 26 right now. So like 10 years ago, like when I was like 16, there wasn't this avenue of like who's number one and like all of like ADCC, it wasn't an avenue at all. Social media was very, very small at the time. So I was working really hard at wrestling and trying to get a scholarship for wrestling. And it was my junior year and I beat out a kid who was a 4-year varsity starter, always winning all these matches. And I just didn't care who he was. I just showed up and I was like, applied my effort, applied my focus, applied my like just determination. And I don't know, one thing I always did in wrestling, I might have not known all the moves. I just tried to wrestle as hard as I can, with not being as athletic as these guys. So I ended up winning the match 7-2. It was like one of those like, remember it more than my high school graduation. I remember walking off the mat, getting my hand raised and looking at like over one of my coach's shoulders. And he's like showing the score to like another coach. And he's like, dude, look at this, And then I went into my first varsity tournament that first weekend. First varsity tournament ever. Like I had maybe had one varsity match before and I just got pinned. First varsity tournament and I took second place. I like pinned the first kid, pinned the first seed kid. And then I lost in the finals by like 2 points. But I was like, whoa, like I can do this, Yeah, so those were two big catalysts to me that I was just like, wow, like you can really like set your mind to anything. And then after that, another shout out to Miss Merrick. Like I wasn't the best at math. I was really natural at science. Like science was just something I really had passion for. And I was just really like, wow, I really enjoy this. But math, it was like not my strongest suit. I wasn't horrible at it. It's just like kind of complicated for me. But then, Miss Merrick like told me to like take double science, double math. So I ended up pursuing like engineering in college and stuff like that. And it was like, I had some of my friends, that were quote unquote like nerds, doing these like calculus problems in like 2 seconds. And I'm there like taking 6 hours on it, taking so long on it. But I just truly believed so much that I can just like work through it. And I did, man. I worked really hard to do it. It just, what it developed in me, pushing myself through the wrestling, pushing myself through the math, pushing myself through engineering, developed this like data-based approach to life, where it's not about how you like feel about certain things or whatever. It's just about like putting in the work, looking at the data, onto the next data. That's what I started to do with jiu-jitsu, Like I'd always been training jiu-jitsu, But then I was like, all right, how are we going to get better? Instead of competing 4 times a year, we're going to compete 40 times this year, you know, and like developing the game, not being focused on like one move and kind of working on plan A, plan B, plan C, wrestling, like everything together, you know. If you just look at me on the street, you're not going to be like, that guy is like top 10 in the world in jiu-jitsu. But because of the mindset first, the mindset it was like top down, that into all these techniques, into all these approaches, you know, like came together so well. And I don't think I'm peaking right now. I think I'm like learning how to hit my stride right now. And I think, yeah, like you mentioned before, I have a really big match coming up in 2 weeks. I'm really looking forward to like show it on the mat there, how to, you know, put this mindset together with also my style of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's a very stoic approach. Like when you talk about just data, you know, emotions are a beautiful thing, but they do cloud your objective, you know, data collection. You know, you talk about these wins, like that one wrestling match even, you know, there might be a small win, but those small wins matter. I never played any organized sports. I've never been a part of a team ever. So growing up,
really, wow,
I never played t-ball. I never played, you know, pee-wee football. I never played soccer. I never did anything like that. I did karate a little bit as a kid, and part of the reason, my parents are very like Rousseauian. So it's just like, you know, whatever you want to do. And
yeah,
the problem with me is like, then I'll just take the easy way out. Like I'll just watch TV all day. And I didn't get the win. So like I would try something athletic, like in gym class, even just with friends, and I wouldn't get a win. So it's just like, well, if I don't get a win, then I'm not going to enjoy it. And then I'm going to just steer away from anything that isn't enjoyable. But you have to get those wins. And the only way you're going to get the wins is if you put yourself out there. Like, you're not going to lose forever. You're not going to lose forever. But it took me, I think I did like 4 or 5 jiu-jitsu tournaments before I got on the podium. I think I think it was like my 3rd jiu-jitsu tournament where I got a win. You know, so getting smashed is like, and I just believe that like, all right, it'll get better. It'll get better. And like you said, like when you take a loss, this goes for basketball. This goes for any, you know, I talked that basketball is big at the high school that I teach at. And I'm just like, you know, a loss can be really beneficial because you go, all right, now there's some problems to work out here. Where if you are losing, you're playing poorly, but you just happen to get a couple of easy, you know, lucky drops and you win the game, squeak it out. Then you go, all right, we figured it out. Like that's not maybe in the long term for the championship. Maybe you win that one game, but you might lose the championship because you won that one game. And I think your approach seems to be that way. And you brought that into jiu-jitsu with like, you're going to win and you're going to lose. And then every time it's just data collection. Is that kind of the way?
Yeah. And I think like even stepping back from like, don't even talk about winning or losing. It's like the man in the arena. Like, are you testing yourself? Are you developing character through adversity? You know, like it's like losing is, man, it sucks. And winning's great, but it's just about like the challenge of it, you know, and it's about pushing yourself. And I think that's how, doesn't matter if it's, you know, playing basketball or great, but like swim, like whatever it is, it's just about like pushing yourself in this medium. I think especially for kids, it's important to like learn how to have fun. It's really important to see them struggle, you know, that's what I did. I always struggled. I struggled in soccer. I struggled in wrestling a lot, you know, and then I went on to wrestle in college. College wrestling was one of the hardest things I've ever done, you know, and I gave up, you know, I quit college wrestling like after sophomore year, and then I didn't get into the program that I wanted to, which was like a 3+2 engineering program. I was trying to wrestle, do jiu-jitsu, and do engineering, and like obviously 2 of them fell off. And then after I didn't get into the 3+2 program, I was supposed to go to the University of Notre Dame. All my friends went to University of Notre Dame with like 3.9s, you know, and I had like you're supposed to have a 3.3 for like guaranteed acceptance. I had like a 3.29, like right on there. If I would have not trained a couple more times, you know, would have been there. But then I went back to wrestling, and then I wrestled for like half of a semester, and I just like didn't like engineering at all. It was like my senior year, didn't like engineering, didn't like wrestling. I was like, what else can I do? And I kind of just looked around, and like one of my friends at the time was like, dude, just do jiu-jitsu. I was like, whoa. Nobody ever told me to do that, you know? And it was like, just kind of follow that life. And then, I don't know. That's the thing I think people don't deal with nowadays. Like, for example, I see a lot of people that are really good at jiu-jitsu, but they don't work on any problems like in between their ears, you know? They're just like, I just need to fix my techniques. I'm like, no, you need to fix your mindset, dude. You need to fix how you're looking at this problem, how you're developing your skill set. It's not just like the skills on the mat. It's like the skills and how you're dealing with all this stuff. I think, have I faced the most adversity out of like all these guys? No way. You know, all these guys I'm competing against have all faced adversity, but I think just how I've responded to it and how I've had like really great mentors around me. Like you mentioned, like my coach, Zach, like training with John Jock, training with Eddie Bravo, seeing all these different viewpoints on like how to solve problems, how to be creative, and to never give up. Come on, dude. And then now we're here, like such a blessing, man.
For sure. I mean, jiu-jitsu is really beautiful in that way. When people like sometimes see me, like my students, they see me, I'm 40 years old. I take care of myself. I work out a lot and all this kind of stuff. And they see me and they're like, oh, you're athletic, or you are, whatever. You have a six pack sometimes if I don't eat a whole lot of ice cream and stuff like that. And what they don't see is it took 40 years for me to like the consistency and discipline element.
Yeah.
And that applies to whatever your sport, whatever your goals are. And, intellectually, yes, but we're going to focus on physically. And I want to talk about the mindset.
But physically follows through intellectually, I think. That's what I'm trying to share. Like for me, that's how it followed. It followed through the mental. It followed through knowing that just keep showing up. And then how how do you
do that though? Sorry to cut you off, but like, how do you do
No, go for it.
It's how do you you do consistent ice baths. You're in the gym. You're getting grinded. People are trying to wrench on your arms and your neck daily. It's uncomfortable. And, the consistency and discipline, like it's that daily grind. How did you come to kind of embrace the grind? Because if you can embrace the grind, one of the things I tell people for when they're trying to build up a career is I say, find the thing you love working hard at. That's gold. If you can enjoy working hard at something, then you'll be successful at it. But how did you specifically go, I am going to do hard things every day, even the days I wake up and I go, I don't want to, you do it. Because if we can bottle that and get it out to people, that's key to a lot of this.
Yeah. So I think it's a balance. Like I think it was a balance of like, if we're talking about how did I like I can stand right here right now. I can't bench 225. I can't do a backflip, like I can't do these like quote unquote athletic things, but then you let me grab a hold of somebody and it looks like I'm kind of athletic, right? So I think it's a balance of two things. I think it took probably like 4 to 5 years of consistent strength and conditioning, like out of college. So I was already like developing to be a man,
4 or 5 years is a lot.
That's what I'm saying. Like a consistent 3 days a week not 3 days a week doing jiu-jitsu, 3 days a week, 2 hours strength and conditioning.
You're seeing results. Because I think people stop.
Probably like
I'm going 3 days a week for the past 2 months and nothing.
Yeah. So I think the first thing, big shout out to, I said shout out to Miss Merrick, but shout out to Craig Merrick at Made Strength. Like you need to be with people that understand how the body works, how functional training is, because you can't just lift heavy weights, I think that's huge. But I think like 2 years of like consistent training, and what I saw from there is you've seen my teammate John Thorblank, who's a specimen, like just a specimen, just came out of the womb with
he crushed a full beer can with his hands. Yeah,
came out of the womb with like double flexing biceps. He is such an athlete. So I noticed it 2 years after I started training, he wasn't able to like break me in half. That was like a goal of mine, he could be in a really dominant position and I could just hold my core strong enough that he couldn't break me in half. And then from there, it just kind of started getting better, started getting, or like, okay, like maybe I can't break him in half, but now like he can't extend my arm behind my, like just all these small little battles. But why I say it's a balance it was a balance of that and being patient with my technique. One thing I know I've talked to you, one thing I've talked to a bunch of our mutual friends that maybe like isn't that pushed in the jiu-jitsu community, isn't just like, I love Jocko, like train hard, good, whatever, right? But it's just like, you can't train hard like 80% all the time. It doesn't matter how much testosterone you take or what you're like you literally can't, And I think what that develops too is a lack of technique. So I think what I developed with not being athletic at first is being super patient with how to understand the techniques and stuff like that, how to understand when I need to be athletic, how to understand when to exert energy, how to be efficient, how to be effective, And then as that skill had developed, like obviously still have, I just got my black belt this year. So that means I can swim in the deep end pretty much. It doesn't mean you can swim with sharks yet, but we're working on it. But I think developing that skill and also having great cardio and developing, like the layers of my body. And the layers of my body, I would say, like, I can sprint, I can jump, I can deadlift, like just not crazy, but just like core, back, like just functional. I can move my body together like really well. I would say a balance of those things, so just two different things for people to look at, like technique and developing that functional strength for jiu-jitsu, or wrestling or MMA, whatever it may be. So I think, yeah. Patience, all that stuff.
Tells you to stay consistent. I mean, that's the part of the thing with my sons is it's like, hey, buddy, there's ups and downs. Every day is a grind. That kind of stuff. Because I think what a lot of people do is they make a New Year's resolution. They work really hard for 2 weeks, the scale doesn't move. And they work really hard for 2 months, the scale doesn't move. Or they work really hard jiu-jitsu, for a year, and they just still get smashed by everybody, and then they give up. It's really hard when you have any small wins. So you have to be really open to those wins, because you might have gotten, like you said, like you might have still gotten completely dominated by your teammate, but he didn't dominate you as much as before. And you consider that a win. If you can sweep a really good guy, like in jiu-jitsu, you can go from being top. Like that's a win, and that should be enough to get you can keep with that consistency and keep with the discipline that's required to get better in an area like this.
Yeah. Well, I think, like you said, right, like the patience in developing technique is not an overnight thing, because, like, for example, I just taught a class this morning, right? And one thing I really stress in classes is I'll do a little warm up. We'll do like technique for 30 minutes to 45 minutes, and then I'll run some live situation. When I run live situation, I emphasize so much. I'm like, hey guys, we're going to start in the same exact position that we just trained in, or that we just drilled in. Okay. Person that's resisting, I want you to 30 to 40% resistance. I want you to almost walk the person through what we did, but just freak out a little bit. Nothing crazy, nothing crazy, nothing. We're not battling for a JJ World League title or something like that, but I want you to stress a little bit, I want you to mess up, and I want you to focus on what's important. But I think that's the progression of technique that you need. And, obviously we've talked about this. There's a lot of different models nowadays of training jiu-jitsu. Some people think you should just do live situation and just roll and just do all that stuff. I disagree. I think sharpening drilling is like the only way to get technique better. Doesn't matter who you are, maybe you're a 10-time world champion already. Cool. Probably know enough stuff. You can just do live. But I think for beginners to get better, for people who are like unathletic to get better, you need to practice the small, minute details, and you have to be patient with you not understanding it at all at first, and just walking yourself through it. And I think, I'm not sure when I got to this level, but I get to this level where like, we don't even need to be doing I can just like walk it through in my head, So like, for me, that's like when I understood, I was like, wow, like this is the true next level, like not needing to like do it on somebody, but just abstractly looking at it in your mind and just being like, oh yeah, just put your arm here, boom, 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 boom. And for me, another secret I haven't mentioned is that as soon as I started doing jiu-jitsu, I started also teaching jiu-jitsu. So it wasn't just me doing it, it was me also teaching it. So for me, teaching has always been like this such cool but like difficult part of my journey, because some people just don't even, like, I would consider myself unathletic, and there's people 100 times more unathletic than me, that have never like literally like can't even lay on the mat, like lift their head up off the mat, so explaining it to those people in a kind, genuine, caring way where you want to see their best growth, and sometimes guess what, sometimes like today I taught a move that probably had like 10 steps total, and we broke it down in a couple different sections. I mean, there wasn't that many people that couldn't even do 3 steps, but there were some people where I was like, hey, don't focus on the whole thing, just focus on these 3 steps, so just learning to crawl before you can run, in technique development, and then the same thing, other side of what I said is really important, like strength training too. Like you shouldn't, like I didn't just start hang cleaning to front squatting to pressing to sprinting, CrossFit. Like I wasn't ready for that, and I was just super patient with that. And instead of chasing like what you were talking about, like numbers and losing weight and gains, like I just chased small progress, over time. And really thankful to like all my coaches, because I like, if it wasn't for me having great coaches, I wouldn't be where I am right now. Like I think I just was an all right listener, I think was a good listener, and just stayed disciplined on the plan, and here we are.
And that's a big thing. And that's what I'm trying to, that's one of the motivations for having this podcast with you is there are people out there, and I was one of them, who my parents were great, many, many things. But as far as like getting me out of my comfort zone, it wasn't one of those. And it was just fine. But like, I think that if we can expose a little bit of this stuff to people and teach them these kinds of things, it'll really help. You talk about gradual improvements, but one of the big things in the sport of jiu-jitsu that people may or may not know about is that performance enhancing drugs are kind of the norm. Like nearly everyone who is at the top of the sport, I say nearly everyone, not everyone, but nearly everyone is on some like anabolic steroids or something like that. They actually don't test for it in most organizations. In one of the big ones, the IBJJF, if you win, then you get tested. And just this past year, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 winners who got busted for it. It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
You, and I know this about you just from knowing you personally, is you take a hard stance that you don't want to do it, even though it would absolutely benefit you in your success in the sport. So can you share a little bit about why you take the stance that you do on performance enhancing drugs? Because I do think that it's interesting, because I think for most athletes, there's not a lot of money in this sport unless you're really at the very, very top. And even then it's not like most other sports. So like, I think people justify it as like, you know, if I, like in college football or something like that, if I do juice and I get a contract, I get $300,000. If I don't do juice and I don't get a contract, I get nothing. So you weigh that out, you go, all right, well, I'm going to lean into this, but you chose not to. And I'd love for you to share kind of your mindset about why you take that stance that you do when very few do in your sport.
Yeah, so I started doing jiu-jitsu when I was like 11. Before that, I had done capoeira when I was like 5. And I maybe started like Ishinryu karate maybe when I was like 9. So just like sort of like lifelong martial artist. And for me, I don't know, like I just look up to people like Bruce Lee and like the Gracies and stuff. And I don't know, I really have always just valued technique over everything, you know? So it wasn't until like I really started getting to the professional level where I started like being in locker rooms, seeing people like stick them, like, dude, what is that? You know, like what's going on? And I don't know, I think now as like a 26-year-old male, like understanding, I'm super grateful I went to college and like learned how to read science and stuff, because I think there are good ways of taking PEDs and being healthy, you know? I don't know, for me, it just breaks down like the whole side of like being a martial artist, and like your technique comes first and all that stuff. So like for me, on top of the technique coming first, I just like would love to be a good example to people, you know, and not to people, but to kids, you know, and like to kids growing up. I don't want to say like, hey, you can be a champion, but you have to inject this in your butt, you know, like I think you can be a champion if you work hard and just stay true to the grind, you know. And
thing, Rene, because there are people who are naturally juiced. You know, you talked about your teammate John, who that, you know, Nick Rodriguez is like a well-known guy in sport. I don't know if they're whatever, but like some people are just John Jones, the MMA fighter, whether or not he got busted for steroids.
Yeah.
Like there are just freaks out there that are like naturally that way. You're not like that.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, well, people justify in their heads like, well, this is just to get to where they're at naturally. You know, like, so it's kind of fair, but you don't play.
I think everyone has their own perspective, but for me, it's just like every time, you know, it's been an option for me or it's been an idea in my head, I'm just like, that's just a crutch. Like, that's just going to be such a crutch. Like, shout out to one of my new sponsors is The Wellness Way. My one friend, we went to college together. He's my second blue belt, graduating from chiropractor school. He's working in Florida right now, but we just like lined up like a food test, a blood panel, all these different things. And for me, it's like, I've never had my test levels looked at and like all that stuff. So, but even with like our preliminary meeting and us just sitting, like going over my diet, going over my routine, going over everything I'm putting in my body, like everything like that, he's already like super impressed at like everything I'm doing. And that's how I kind of looked at it. I mean, like sleep is so important, you know, I know I can do better in how I recover because you know what my schedule is like in traveling and all training and all that stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's sort of like a crutch. It definitely can help you run faster and jump higher and do all those things. But to me, it's just felt like cheating. And it just felt like, well, if I lean on that, then am I going to be more like today? I'm not going to train at night. I'm just going to drill. You know, I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to learn some stuff. And because I have to train, I have to go 100% tomorrow at JT Torres' school, Essential. So it's like just understanding how the body works and understanding that like I don't need to train. Like these guys that are on juice, they train 3 times a day, every day, hard, you know. That's just, I can't do that. But how can I, you know, going back to mindset, like how can I train my mind? You know, how can I study jiu-jitsu? How can I, you know, develop technique? How can I don't know. For me, it's just the stance that I have right now. And, you know, super grateful to be like along with like people like recent youngest ADCC champ, Cade Rotullo. And then the recent, also youngest IBJJF champ, Ty Rotullo, which I'm not trying to get into any controversy, but Mika Galvão actually beat Ty, but he popped for steroids. as like a 19, 18-year-old kid straight out of Brazil, you know? So, you know, he's a great kid. His dad's a great guy. They came out and said that like they were taking something that was like whatever, the wrong thing or something. And yeah, that's what everyone says, you know? But look at this kid, you know, like he definitely works really hard for sure. But you know,
Yeah, I mean, steroids don't
Just-
nullify hard work, but it
for
does.
sure. It enhances it. It enhances it. That's what it is. Performance enhancing drugs, you know? And I don't know. The biggest thing for me, science wise, is that nowadays what a lot of people are taking isn't even testosterone anymore. Like obviously, like that's the most basic entry. Like boom, you know, taking testosterone is bad. No, it's not. You know, you just have to know how much you're taking, know how much you already have, like all this stuff. But what I think is dangerous nowadays, and that's why like I've taken like this stance of like, no, like let's get outside, let's get some sunlight, let's ground, let's do ice, like whatever, however I can amplify myself naturally, that's what I'm gonna do. Because what people are getting into now are like called like SARMs and some peptides and stuff. And is it great for the short term? Absolutely. But do you know in the long term how it's gonna be? This stuff's not even been around for 10 years. There's no clinical trials on it, you know? I don't think it's great in the long term. And for me, my goal wasn't even to be one of the best in the world. And now we're like on track to do that. So my goal is just to push myself as hard as I can to see where I can go. And then I want to have a family one day and I want to have kids and I want to have all this stuff. So I don't want to have to worry about like cancer or anything like that, or like anything wrong with my reproductive health or anything. So my short-term goals are just to do my best, you know? And I think, you know, I take like supplements daily, like nothing crazy, like some multivitamin, some greens, some different kinds of like mushroom extracts, and maybe like krill oil, nothing too crazy. I just, my friend from the Wellness Way just got me this like male glandular complex, which has like beef testes, beef liver, all this stuff, but it's just like a capsule that you take, grass fed from New Zealand. So super natural. One thing that they're big on is like they're focused on thoughts, toxins, and traumas, and just like eliminating bad things, just like making you the best version of yourself, like just naturally first. So as soon as he told me that, I was like, yeah, like let's do that, you know? So I'm really excited. It's kind of like a little fast timing because we're going to do the test this week. I'm going to go away to Austin next week, and then I go to Iceland for 2 weeks. But as soon as I get back, it'll be perfect because I'll have all my results and I'll be able to put in like a really good camp for ADCC trials in October, which is, you know, this match is the biggest match of my life. But what the true goal is to get to ADCC and just do my thing there. So, this match is a great warm-up, and then ADCC trials will be like a perfect prep for that. You know, ADCC trials doesn't go my way. We'll see how it goes. Have another chance at East Coast or West Coast trials in the spring. And then because I'm Brazilian, I also have 2 chances to go to Brazil trials. And now that I'm not a school teacher anymore, I can take a full month off and just go to Brazil and just compete. So that might be the plan. And I just booked a trip to Costa Rica to do a camp in February. So maybe I'll just be in Costa Rica, go down to Brazil, compete, you know, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is knowing your goals. You know, I think there's a lot of, especially young people, that they're not even specific. You've heard of like SMART goals, like specific, you know, measurable, attainable, and all that stuff. And I think their goal is just like to get in shape or to get better. And I think that when it really narrow down what your goals are, then you can take a better approach on how to develop that. So like if it's to win a specific tournament or something like that, or to be a specific weight or something along those lines, then you go, okay, I can kind of like reverse engineer it or something.
Yeah. Well, for me, going back to wrestling, like this is just a blessing of mine. Like that, I didn't even do anything. I just showed up and listened, did my homework, you know? Like that's how I was in school. Like I just was maybe like a little class clown sometimes and would mess around, but I just always got my work done, you know? And my wrestling coach is one of the best wrestlers in this area in the last like 50 years. Like really great guy and just really determined. Like, and he just really instilled this hard work principle in me. Every season he had us write short-term, long-term goals in the classroom, in the wrestling room, outside the wrestling room. He would have us like talk about how we're going to develop a plan to get to those things, to those goals. And then another thing too that leads back into like the data collection and just reflecting on stuff is like every time I'd lose, like we would just sit there and talk about like how we can get it better. Like just like the time and attention, you know? So that was huge.
Yeah. Talk about that, Rene. So like, how do you, this is like a good advice for everybody, but I'm going to for young people too, especially, is like, how do you take a loss well? You've had losses. Like, how do you take them well? Because that is a really difficult thing when you're an athlete, when you're trying to be the best and stuff like that. What advice would you have for someone?
Dude, who cares? Like, literally, like, I was talking to Justice about this yesterday. Who cares? You're putting that weight on it yourself. You know what I'm saying? I know, but like, it doesn't, like, I don't know. It's just you're putting that weight on yourself that it matters so much. Everyone's going to forget about it by next week. Even if it was this, like, for example, maybe I was just forced to lose a lot, you know, but I just lost so many times. And then like leading up into these big opportunities that I had. I was one of the biggest highlight reels of like 2021, you know what I'm saying, with the double buggy choke I got caught in. But guess what I chose to do? Reflect, learn, sharpen it more, and it got me into the biggest opportunity of my whole life, onto the show Who's Next. So like you are putting that weight on yourself. If you fail a test and you're like, I'm never gonna pass this class, with that attitude, you know what I'm saying? Like just change your mindset on it. And I don't know, I think like in losing, you can lean into it. You can lean into it and be like, why did I lose? Like so many different things, it could be a loss on the mat or it can be a loss in the classroom. And there's just so many different approaches to like, all right, cool. Like, how did you study? You know what I'm saying? How did you prepare for this? All right. Did you prepare? Oh, you prepared every way. But then when you walked in that day, you drank 2 cups of coffee and you were like so jittery. Like how, finding that balance of preparation and then execution, that's what I think is really important. Just like looking at it all, it's just data. Take your ego out of it. And I think another shout out to another person who has taught me a lot, like my philosophy professor in college, stoicism, like it just be the gray rock, like just neutral. It's all good, just keep, yeah. And I don't know, just taking that step back and not associating with like, I am the loss. Like, it's just like, I don't know. Like, I think people just think about it too much. Like I would truly rather win, or I would truly rather lose and go for something bigger outside my comfort zone that I'm really reaching for, that maybe in 2 years I'm going to win, than just staying around where I know I can win, that doesn't scare me. That doesn't make me feel alive, like I like to go into a match being like, I have no idea how this is going to work out. I have so much respect for this guy I'm fighting. I know he's one of the best in the world. I'm just going to just totally like give myself to the present moment, be focused, be everything in my preparation to do everything in my favor to like stack all my cards in my favor, be ready for that moment. And when that moment comes, just face it and just really like run against the wall, run around the wall, however you need to figure out the problem. I think that's how, at least for me, that's how I like to like live,
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question, then I'll close out talking about what's coming up and everything for you. But something that's come up on this podcast a lot, done like 150 something episodes, is the concept of identity, how you identify. So if someone, how do you identify?
Identifies as a man.
Man. Okay. What else though? What else? Because like it comes in the trans stuff, but really, you identify, here's what I'm saying. Like, do you identify as the best jiu-jitsu guy in this realm? Do you say like how you identify matters? Here, for me, it's not like I don't identify as someone who's like smart or has the right answers. I identify as someone who is trying to be smarter and wants to get to the right answers. So in that, when I'm proven wrong, like a loss, like an intellectual loss and like some sort of thing like that, I embrace that because I go, oh, I was wrong before. I'm better today. It's like a loss. It's like a loss on the mat type of thing. But identity is structured in such a way that I seek out being proven wrong. I think that I have good ideas, and I'm actually not as easy to win in debate as I used to be, or as much as other people perhaps, or something like that. But it's because I have this approach. So maybe you have something along those lines when it comes to jiu-jitsu. It's like, I'm not trying to lose a debate. I'm not trying to lose an intellectual conversation here. But if I do, then it's like, wow, I just got a whole bunch of really good data that's going to be way better. Is that aligned with like the way you kind of identify, so to speak, not just what you know?
I'm trying to like, my journey in this was that I didn't want to chase the normal 9 to 5. So from the dipping out of the 9 to 5, I chose to, do something where I was like, you know what, just teaching jiu-jitsu to me makes me feel so alive, and I love how I can empower people. And if I died tomorrow, how I empowered people today, how I left my soul on the mat teaching people was enough for me, to like live a life filled of like, I don't know, just love and putting good stuff on earth, so like when God or whoever looks at me like, dude, you did good job. This next level for me is not about me at all, like truly. And it sounds kind of crazy because I wake up every day, I do my thing, I worry about me, I'm like off my phone, focusing on me, like all these things. Don't hang out with my family, don't hang out with my friends just because I'm focused on me and my development. But sounds backwards, but it's not about me. It's about like, maybe I've just listened to too many Joe Rogan podcasts, but I want to be that hero in my story where like I reached my dreams. I reached this thing, and I can like look around and I can just look at people and be like, you can be anything you set your mind to. Like, I don't want to be somebody who is 40 or 50 years old and just sitting there like watching my kids play and being like, man, I just wish when I had the opportunity I went for it. I like could have been, oh, that hurts so much, you know? And how I feel about that is because both my parents came here to America. They gave up their whole entire lives just to put me through college and to put me and my sister through college, and they never got to chase their dreams, you know? So yeah, do my parents want me to be doing jiu-jitsu? Absolutely not. They would love me to be an engineer or a doctor and just chasing this. But I hope that one day they see my vision in trying to chase my dreams, and not just chase my dreams, but to motivate people to be a better person, to motivate people to not just be like, oh man, like, yeah, my life is in this little box and that's comfort and that's cool. Smash that box. You know what I'm saying? Like, where do you want to be in your life? And I don't know. I think it's a lot about community, you know, like we haven't known each other that long, but in the small amount of time, like you've been a really huge part of my community recently, and like just putting great people into my community. And yeah, I do stuff to motivate your boys. I do stuff to motivate you guys. I do stuff to motivate the people at my school, and not to be like, oh, I want to be like Rene, like just because like there's this one guy at our school, his name is Stan Stansky, like super normal, like white guy, just super chill guy, has a bunch of kids, just comes in to train, he's an engineer. Right before the pandemic hit, I had one of the big high rollers tournaments, and he was like, Rene, if I was you, I would just keep doing exactly what you're doing, you know, like, and he just was like sharing that I motivated him a little bit, you know, and for me, that's just like, man, if I can just motivate you just to like, I don't know, push yourself a little bit more, or like, I don't know, just jump outside of that box of comfort, you know, and grow, you know?
Yeah, I think it's when you surround yourself with certain people that are going for it, then it's like, oh, that's possible. You know, it's like that for me because I was in a very, you know, fixed mindset environment my whole life. But when I met my wife is very much just like growth mindset. She's just like, this is possible. That's impossible. No, it's not. Watch, I'll do it. And like,
yeah,
she fails a lot, but she's successful in a lot of ways. And I think that when you're surrounding yourself with people like that, and that's what I'm trying to do, expose you to my audience, is like, it doesn't really matter what it is. It could be a jiu-jitsu tournament. It could be talking to that cute girl that you see all the time. You just never had the guts. Like going up there and shooting your shot, you know, to be polite. And if she's like really rude to you, then it's like, all right, well, now you know that she sucks and you're better off.
Yeah.
My students all the time, like, go to shoot your shot in a polite way, put your best foot forward. Well, really, whatever it is just you take on challenges. That's again what this book is about taking on these challenges and recognizing it's gonna be like the stock market. It's gonna be up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. But it's an upward trajectory that you're just developing your human potential. You're just gonna be a better version of yourself than you were yesterday.
Yeah,
were 2 years ago.
It's just like what life do you want to live? That's the question.
Yeah.
What kind of life do you want to live? You know, and I want to live the kind of life, the kind of things I do in the next couple of years. I could just ride off into the sunset after that. You know, it's just like right now I'm so like, I just got a text from somebody and they're like, hey, can you come corner us in MMA this weekend? I was like, yeah, are you kidding me? Duh. That's like so cool to me, you know, like even Justice, like one of our good friends, Justice, who's your pastor at the church that you go to, and the church that I listen to a lot, you know, he asked me to come coach him yesterday. And yesterday I had a tournament at our school where there was like over 150 people competing, and probably like 50 people were my friends, you know? So like I could have been there coaching them, but he's somebody who's like really put me back with my faith and put me back into like following Jesus. So I was like, I want to be there for him, you know? For me, that's just like, it's just like so amazing to be a coach like that. So I can't be a coach without practicing what I preach and out there, you know, going after these challenges, going after these tough matches, going after the best guys in the world. And am I scared? Of course, dude. If you're not scared, you don't respect these guys, you know? So I'm scared in some ways, you know, but at the same time, I'm very aware that these guys are only human, you know? And it's like, yeah, it's a game of this physical chess and stuff, but it's like, it's a lot about, I think the biggest thing that I've been learning when I compete, it's a lot about presence, you know? And maybe that's something we haven't talked about, but in meditation for me, that's been one thing that I've really been able to sharpen, and learning how to just like empty my mind and just be still and just be ready to go when it's time, you know, because when you get nervous and you get anxious and you have all these bad thoughts, if you don't know to just take a step back, let the leaves on the river pass, you know, then you're gonna drown. But that's one thing I've practiced so along with practicing the techniques along with practicing the athleticism, top down mindset first, brain, then body, alignment, the balance of it. For me, that's where I think I transcend my potential. And I'm really looking forward for like these next couple of years of just living the dream, going for, like, dude, if you would have, like, literally, I looked at like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, like on my Facebook or Instagram, and like, if you would have told me I would have had one article or one video of me on flow grappling, which is like, maybe people don't know, but like, it's like the highest thing for us, like in terms of like a news kind of channel for our sport. I would have been ecstatic. I would have been so excited, And now there's like a library of stuff on me from the TV show Who's Next and from everything, So I'm first of all just thankful to God, first of all, just for all the opportunities. But then second of all, I'm super grateful for the community I have around me, everyone empowering me, believing in me, putting this good energy into me. And yeah, I'm just showing up and doing my best,
Yeah, I mean, I love it. The just for you specifically, jiu-jitsu is a weird sport because like most sports, you get paid basically nothing for the vast majority. And then you get to the 1%, and at the 1%, there's some money there. But martial arts, there really isn't. Boxing at the very, very, very tippy top. But like HBO boxing undercard guys do not get paid a lot. We have some mutual friends who have fought like the UFC. They get paid less than I do as a high school teacher, generally. Like this.
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's not a lot of money in it. And you're a peaceful kind of nerdy guy that could have made a living as an engineer doing a whole bunch of things, but you just love strangling people too much. But one of the things, I'm like as amateur as it gets when it comes to the sport of jiu-jitsu. I go a few times a week. I just love it. I do compete sometimes at very, kind of low levels. I've been doing it for a long time, but kind of off and on. But I overthink things. That's why I have a podcast, why I do all this stuff, is like I just am constantly overthinking everything. And I was like that with jiu-jitsu when I'd be on the mat and just overthink everything. Like, wait a second.
Overanalyze.
Around with this grown man getting sweaty. I'm 40 years old. This is so silly. It's so selfish. And one of the things that you did was you helped kind of coach me in being present and being mindful and stuff like that. And you did it even remotely. So if there's people listening, I know I have people that listen who love jiu-jitsu, even remotely, the way that you were able to break down my match, essentially some of my losses, you're like, here's some specific techniques to do. And then we talked about mindset. And I came back and I did the best jiu-jitsu I've ever done in a tournament after that. So I think that, you're a good balance of those two things. You know the techniques really well because you had to develop those because your lack of athleticism naturally. But then the mindset that you had that kind of facilitates all that. So for people out there that are looking, like there's not a lot of money to support this kind of like endeavor to get people. So one of the ways that you do it is through coaching and things like that. You have a big fight coming up with Nicky Ryan, who's like the GOAT, the sports smaller brother, and came up with him. Like he's really, really good that you're going up against. It's a challenge for you. It's in Austin, Texas on August 10th, number one.
Yeah.
But where can people kind of follow you, get in touch with you, maybe even reach out to you for coaching and all that kind of stuff? Because I can't recommend you enough. I mean, there was no pressure. I wasn't like, oh, I got to do well now because I got to shout out Rene because you really went out of your way for me. But it just
there's no pressure. There's no pressure. There's just do your thing.
For me to do the best jiu-jitsu I did after talking with you and just spending some time with you.
Yeah. So everything's just on my Instagram. So it's just at RENE_SOUSA. And then if you want to watch the flow grappling, Who's Number One, you just go through the link in my bio. So if you share it on your Instagram, just go through the link in my bio, use that link, and I'll get like some like little stuff from that. So they're like watching the clicks and stuff like that from everybody. So that link is specific to me. It's just in my bio. Just if you want to watch that, if you want to get tickets, or if you want to subscribe to Flow, just go through that link. And yeah, everything else is on my Instagram. So just follow me on there. A really big part that, maybe I'm not the one of the top 10 in the world right now. One thing that I think I've done pretty well already is I've understood how to like market myself and understood how to like align with some sponsors and stuff. So just been blessed to like put some messages out to sponsor. I've had like almost like 12 to 15 sponsors for the next tournament. So the content we're going to pump out is going to look really great. That's going to be all on my YouTube and stuff like that, and my Instagram, but mainly on my YouTube. We're going to do like kind of an embedded kind of series and just give some shout outs to the people that are supporting me and just do some ads on there. Nothing crazy. But yeah, that'll be a cool way to like, what's cool? I don't know. Maybe I'm just too much of a martial arts nerd, but I love watching the embeds on Fight Week. It's like the coolest thing, So we're going to do a similar kind of style to that. We're going to do a little pre-training preview. Tomorrow we go to Essential, and then Wednesday I'll train here. And then my diet starts to come down a little bit, so the weight kind of gets better, but everything's going really well. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, and then actually, before I turn this off, one last thing that I want to put out, so I want to put on my social media is, can you give up like a 30-second, 1 minute shout out to the benefits of jiu-jitsu for getting your children and yourself as an adult into the benefits of jiu-jitsu as a sport? Let's get more people into the sport now.
Yeah, so I think jiu-jitsu is not only a really good physical development for your body if you're an adult or if you're growing up as a kid, but I think the mental aspect of it, I think the mental aspect of like looking at problems from a different perspective is a huge thing that you see in jiu-jitsu. It's not just how can I go through this person or through this wall, but how can I go around it? How can I go under it? How can I outthink it? You know, on top of that, I think it's one of the most beautiful communities in all of sports across the whole world. You can play basketball, you can play soccer, you can do all these things. But when you're in jiu-jitsu, you're hanging out with a CEO of a billion-dollar company. You're hanging out with a plumber. You're hanging out with a guy like me wearing tie-dye shirts and flip-flops. You're hanging out with, you know, like a mom of like 6 kids, like all these different communities. So I think it's a really beautiful community that really brings people together. And I think it's truly, I don't know, don't listen to me, listen to Joe Rogan. It's a superpower, you know, on top of just the physical and the mental. If somebody grips you up, good luck, you know. So that's the last thing. That's like the last thing on top of it, you know. So it's like, and that was always the plus to me, you know, like I got into it to learn how to just defend myself. And that's the thing that I tell people nowadays when I try to get people involved. I'm like, you don't need to do it like I do and do it every day and be crazy about it and compete. Just do it until you feel comfortable against somebody who's 250 pounds, athletic, and they're trying to hold you down and hurt you, you know, man or woman, you know, like whoever, you know, like, you know, find a community, find a community that you resonate with, find a gym nowadays. You know, it's such a blessing to have from here, 30 minutes of me, I have like 10 different gyms I can train at, you know? So wherever you look up gyms, and, you know, find a cool place and, you know, just get involved. So it's a really cool environment. And,
it's the best. And it's for everybody, you know, it makes women believe that they're stronger than they thought. And it makes women realize that they're stronger than they thought, and men realize they're not as strong as they think. And I think for men, it simultaneously builds confidence and humility, which is an incredible combination. I mean, ladies listening, wouldn't you want your guy to be more confident and humble? Like, isn't that a good thing? Guys, young men, isn't that what you want, to be more confident and humble? Anyway, Rene,
they don't want to be humble. They don't want to be humble.
Sit down. Be humble. All right, Rene, thank you so much for coming on here and talking about this.
Yep.
I highly recommend the jiu-jitsu, but also the concepts of Carol Dweck and mindset. And check out Rene. Follow his career. Reach out to him for help with developing your jiu-jitsu game and everything like that. I really appreciate it. I love you, brother. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, love you too, man. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoy these kinds of complex conversations and want to try to apply them in your own life, check out my free download, Debate to Dialogue, a guide on having productive conversations on religion and politics. It's available at www.cylinderradio.com/debate to dialogue.